Do you have someone in your life that you would like to comfort, to console, to hug, to let them know that you're praying for them when you're with them and even when you're not? Consider making them a prayer shawl or a prayer blanket. I'll show you how. You may wonder, what exactly is a prayer shawl or a prayer blanket? Well, that's simple. It's anything that's knitted, crocheted, or handmade in any way by someone while they are praying for the person who will receive it. So many churches and faith communities have ministries that work on these, and so they are for men and women, adults and children, and really any pattern, any construction is fine. So our prayer shawl ministry strives to have prayer shawls that are about 3 feet wide by 5 to 6 feet long. That way they work for just about anyone, but really they can be any size, construction, variation. So this prayer shawl is just one option that I'll show you. I've made many, and they are always a gift from the heart and a gift of love. To begin this project, you will need 3 skeins of worsted weight yarn in a solid color. I used Caron Simply Soft Victorian Rose. You will also need 2 skeins of a multicolored worsted weight yarn. I used Caron Simply Soft Paints in their Rose Garden color. You will also need a hook. The hook I used was the recommended hook for this size of yarn, and it was a 5mm or an H like Harry, and I used a steel hook. The finished size of the shawl for me was 30 inches by 47 inches, and when I finished I had a little less, or about half a skein of each color left. This yarn is 100% acrylic, so it's washable and dryable. But I will say, although it's soft and works up very lovely, it is difficult yarn to use if you're a beginner, because the Caron Simply Soft does split badly. So I would recommend, if you're a beginning crocheter, to choose a different worsted weight yarn. The foundation chain is going to be made in your main solid color, which for me was the rose, and it's going to be done in multiples of 4 plus 3 stitches. So I used 100 chains plus 3, 103, and that will be the length of the shawl. For this video, I am going to only work a swatch, so I'm going to work a 20 stitch swatch, so I'm actually chaining 23 chains, and then we'll start with the swatch. And on these chains, there's a technique that I learned, that you rotate the chain, that's the front side, this to the back side, and use the bump from the back as your what you put your stitch into. This creates a base chain that is far more stable, and I find that sometimes my base chain looks loose and kind of wobbly and uneven, and this I found created a very nice stable chain. And I will put the link to the video at TL Yarn Crafts, where I learned this trick, in the description as well as up on the screen. Now you've finished your first row of half double crochets, and you need to chain 1 and then turn. and that is going to put you on your second row. And the second row in this foundation stage is just going to be another row of half double crochets, one in each of the previous rows half double crochets. So for the last stitch in the second row is where you're going to do your color change. So yarn over, insert your hook in the last stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Then I just put a loop on my hook of the new color and pull that through all of your loops on the hook. Then yarn over and chain one and turn. Now you're going to make a half double crochet in each of the first 2 stitches, or in 2 of the half double crochets from the previous row. Chain 2 and skip 2 stitches, and then 2 more half double crochets. Repeat that sequence of 2 half double crochets, chain 2, skip 2 stitches, and then 2 half double crochets, chain 2, skip 2 stitches, 2 half double crochets until you get to the end of the row. You're going to chain 1 and turn and repeat this row exactly like you did this time. And then at the end of that second row of the multicolor, you will color change back to the rows and will begin the next stitch. Repeat the same color change technique for the last stitch in the second row of the multicolor. Just pick up the solid color and let it trail up the side of your work, chain 1 and turn. Now your first 2 stitches in this third row of the 4-row repeat are going to be 2 half double crochets. And now when you get to the 2 chains, you are going to look down below to the third row below for those 2 empty stitches you skipped. You're going to yarn over and go into the first empty stitch of that third row below, pull up a long loop, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So this is technically a long double crochet, and you're going to do the same thing in the next empty stitch from the rows below. Now you'll go back to a half double crochet, 2 half double crochets in the previous row. And it's a good idea to kind of straighten those long double crochets while you're right there. They get a little twisted. Now 2 more long double crochets in those empty stitches from the third row below. And you're going to repeat that pattern all the way across to the end. You will end with 2 half double crochets on the end of your row, and you'll chain 1 and turn. The final row of the 4-row repeat is just another row of all half double crochets all the way across. Very simple row. And that finishes your 4-row repeat. And now is where you would do your color change again to begin the next row in your variegated color. Chain 1 and turn. But this is what the swatch looks like. This is why I call it a window pane stitch, is because the variegated color peeks through, like it's peeking through a window between the main color stitches. And this is how it looks. So you're going to repeat this 4-row pattern of the half double crochets in the variegated color, 2 and 2 chains. You do that for 2 rows, and then you come back with your main color. And here's what it looks like in the shawl that I'm making, the full shawl, when you can see it in a little bit bigger piece. This is how it looks. I like this pattern, and I adapted this pattern and this stitch so that it is very much the same front or back. I really appreciate that in a blanket or a shawl, so that when you pick it up and you are throwing it across yourself or wrapping it around yourself, you aren't terribly concerned about front and back. And as you can see here, the front and the back is virtually the same. There's a slight difference, but it's virtually the same, and it's interchangeable. So I'm going to continue this pattern and this repeat for a total of 62 rows. And at the end of those 62 rows is where I'm going to begin my edging. And I will edge this blanket. I've got 2 rows of rose color. You're going to want to end your 62 rows, or however many rows you decide to do, with the 2 rows of the main color so that it matches both top and bottom. That means now that you've got 2 rows of rows on the top and the bottom, but none on the sides. So what I chose to do was to go across the bottom where I was again one more time, which made it a 3rd time. Then I went across each of the side rows. I made the side row, I went across and then back and then across again till I was down at the bottom again, where I had 2 rows of rows. Then I turned my corner, and again in each corner you always want to make sure that you put 3 half double crochets. These are all half double crochets in the edging, and you put 3 in your corner stitch where you turn. So on my 3rd one, and I went down to the bottom, I was able to put a 3rd row there. So now my top and bottom each have 3 rows of rose colored. Then I went to the side again, and I did up and back and up again. And now I have 3 rows on all sides of rose. And now I turned and I did a 4th row all the way around the entire shawl with just the rose color. Then I changed colors and I did half double crochet, 2 rows of the variegated color, or the rose garden color, and then I came back and finished 4 more rows of rose, and then I did a scallop stitch, or a fan stitch, to finish the edging. And that fan stitch has to be done in multiples of 4, so sometimes you'll have to adjust. So the fan stitch was simply double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. So I had a total of 5 double crochets and a total of 4 chain 1s, all in one stitch. And I begin at the corner so that that fan is on every corner, right at the corner. Then you're going to skip a stitch and do a single crochet, and then skip a stitch and then start another fan. So that fan stitch goes all the way around the border. Then I wanted this blanket to be extra special. Roses are something that is always been part of just who I am and what I love. So if you want to watch my making crochet roses video, you can see how to make these roses. These roses are just the bud portion, so the first 4 petals on that pattern, not the full rose, and that's what I chose to put on here. I did them in 3 colors, and I chose to put a pearl bead in the center of each one. You also do the base for the rose, or the kind of the collar, I call it, just like in that rose making crochet roses video. So it's only the first 4 small rosebud petals, so just the petals for the bud and then the collar. And I stitched that together as opposed to gluing it together, because I want this whole blanket to be washable. And I'm stitching the buds on the corner, one of the corners of the blanket, and I stitched them down so that they will hold tight and go through the washing just fine. Then after I finish stitching these 3 rosebuds down to the blanket, I used a double strand of the green crochet thread, and I crocheted, or I didn't crochet, I guess I embroidered a stem using an outline stitch, like an embroidery outline stitch, to embroider the stem.